é só isso, não tem mais jeito, acabou. Boa sorte, não tenho o que dizer, são só palavras, e o que eu sinto não mudará. Tudo que quer me dar é demais, é pesado, não há paz. Tudo que quer de mim, irreais, expectativas desleais.
That's it, there's no way, it's over. Good luck, I have nothing left to say. It's only words, and what I feel won't change.
Tudo que quer me dar
Everything you want
é
to give me,
demais, é
it's too
pesado,
much, it's
não há
heavy.
paz. Tudo que
There's
quer
no
de mim,
peace. All you want from me
irreais,
isn't real expectation.
desleais. Mesmo se segure, quero que se cure dessa pessoa que o aconselha a um desencontro. Veja por esse ponto, há tantas pessoas especiais.
Now even if you hold yourself, I want you to get cured from this person who advises you. There is a disconnection. See through this point of view. There are so many special people in the world. So many special people in the world. In the world. All you
Tudo
want,
que quer me dar
everything you
é
want to give me.
demais, é
It's too
pesado,
it's
não
heavy.
há paz. Tudo que
There's
quer de
no
mim,
peace. All you want from me
irreais,
isn't real expectation. Now we're falling,
falling,
falling
falling
to the night.
into the night.
Falling,
Falling,
falling to the night.
o bom encontro é de dois.
Now we're falling,
Falling,
falling
falling
to the night.
into the night.
Falling,
Falling,
falling
falling
to the night.
First things first, I'ma say all the words inside my head. I'm fired up and tired of the way that things have been. Oh, ooh, the way that things have been. Oh, ooh. Second thing, second, don't you tell me what you think that I can be. I'm the one at the sail, I'm the master of my sea. Oh, ooh, the master of my sea. Oh, ooh. I was broken from a young age, taking my soak into the masses, writing my poems for the few that look at me, took to me, shook at me, feeling me, singing from heartache, from the pain, taking my message from the veins, speaking my lesson from the brain, seeing the beauty through the
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Advanced T2 Returns today. My name is Jason Hasty, and I will be your host and leader today. Just one moment as I access the screen. You should all be able to see the Advanced T2 Returns screen. All right, this is me, Jason Hasty. I'm a CPA CA. And I've got my master's in professional accounting that I got at the University of Saskatchewan. I am speaking to you today from Calgary, Alberta. And yeah, it's a good way to start our week off. This is the advanced session of ProTax T2. I had the basic or the introduction section last month. And we're doing the T2 right now. And in the new year, we will be doing the introduction and the advanced ProTax for T1. So as we jump into T1 personal filing, personal tax return season. A few housekeeping items for today. So today's webinar on Eastern Standard Time is going to run from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. My time is 12 to 2, of course, and then Pacific time, an hour behind. So they're the only ones in the morning yet. As part of the webinar today, we're going to have 2 short breaks, give you a chance to stretch, get up and stretch, use the washroom, get a drink. Also in today's session, we're going to have 1 hands-on assignment for you to do. And you don't have to have purchased ProTax yet. You can always start tax returns for free in ProTax, and I'll chat about that a little bit later. A couple of things that we want to make sure that you have or have access to: your ProTax training guide. So that's a really important, comprehensive, very informative guide that Intuit has done on ProTax. So you should have access to that in your materials for today's session, as well as the exercise that we're going to do and the slideshow presentation. So ProTax training guide for T2s for corporate tax returns. It actually starts on page 106. Pages 1 to 105 focuses on T1s. So you will use that if you are attending the T1 sessions in January and February. For any questions, please put those in the Q&A area. We have the webinar chat disabled. So the place to ask questions is in the Q&A area. And we have a team of Intuit professionals helping out and assisting with answering those questions that you have today. So ask away. And if I don't get to them in answering them, the Intuit team will as well. Today's course is eligible for up to 2 CPD credits. Those credits will actually come to you via email within 1 week of attending the class. So if you don't get those credits, please reach out to the Intuit team to ensure, but they could be delayed up to a week. So, and thank you, Robert. I heard you hear you loud and clear, so that's good. I always like to get some feedback on that as well too. So again, CPD credits are going to be emailed to you within 1 week of today's class. Disclaimer, all information in today's webinar, just note it's for educational and informational purposes only, not to be used for legal or tax advice or opinions on any specific matters. This webinar contents and presenter, myself, are not to be relied upon for tax treatment of items reflected on tax returns. Wanting to give you as much information as possible, regardless, and specifically in relation to ProTax. For T2, Deborah's asking which page. It starts on page 106. So you should see the T2 area. And yeah, it covers a lot of really great things that we're going through today in today's webinar, and covers them in more detail as well. So great to have that as a resource. Okay, so in November, we had the intro to ProTax. And in that, we covered a few items. We covered our books to tax. So in the QuickBooks Online environment, the cloud environment for Intuit's accounting, we have QuickBooks data files. As accountants or tax preparers, we have access to QBOA, QuickBooks Online Accountant, which is your the environment that encompasses everything from your clients' QuickBooks Online files to preparing their books and getting them ready for the tax return, doing the year end, takes the books to tax. So the books part of it, the working papers or the work papers, as it's called, allows you to prepare your year end. And in the same module, same environment, you can move all the way to creating your tax return, which is through ProTax, the cloud-based tax program, which we will be talking about more today. We also talked about setup and navigation, so kind of navigating through ProTax. If you missed some of that, we will be repeating some of that setup and navigation in our T1 module, and that is January 11th. So if you haven't signed up for that and you're looking to look at to get introduced to ProTax for T1s, the introduction course for that is January 11th. And then the advanced course is happening on February 2nd. So encourage you to get signed up for those. If you need the links to get signed up, you can go to any of the Intuit resources to access the links and the calendar, which I'll be explaining a little bit about more today, or you can ask it in the question and answer section. Also talked about, speaking of getting help and getting access to the resources, we talked about it in intro to ProTax, and we'll talk a little bit about the resources that we're going to show that you have access to as well today. Okay, so introduction to work papers. I talked about work papers as well, and that's the environment where we prepare the year end and get ready for the tax return. In work papers, that's also where you can work on preparing the financial statements for your clients as well. So if you're used to using something like Caseware or CaseView, things like that, the work papers functionality within the QBO environment does the same thing in a cloud-based and very intuitive environment. And then we went through a basic T2. So that's what we did last time. Today, we will be doing another exercise as discussed and further delving into ProTax. So we're going to start off with looking at our letters and consent, the all-important letters that we can send to clients, and having it in an environment where you have access to the client's database. So that's through your QBOA, your QuickBooks Online Accountant file, having access to all of your clients' information as kind of a CRM in that sense, and pulling the information into the letters and the consent area. Then we'll be going through some key T2 forms. So the tax forms specific to T2 and the schedules that are used when filing a tax return. And then from there, we'll be talking about Autofill My Return. So some very powerful features that ProTax has incorporated with it in relation to what the CRA offers as part of their ability to access information or access your client's information very quickly, easily, and efficiently as well. Then we are going to be looking at importing Giphy files, and that will be part of your exercise today as well. And we will also be talking about the all-important T2 FRRMS, or Foreign Reporting Requirements Management System. So something that the CRA has released that is really, really important to file for clients with any type of foreign entity or foreign presence as well, including related corporations. And then we will give you your turn to do the exercise from today's webinar. Okay, so to start off, kind of as a refresher, if you didn't attend the T1 or the T2 intro, we had it in there as well. So if you want to purchase ProTax, you can file or you can start filing any return for free. Then if you'd like to purchase ProTax, there's 3 different modules that are available now. It started out with just the T1 and the T2, but we also now have the T3 module as well. And each of those modules can be purchased separately. So you don't have to purchase them all as one package. You can purchase just what you need to. For ProTax T1, so personal tax returns, the fee is $500 for the whole year. So once you purchase that subscription, that gives you access to filing unlimited T1 personal tax returns for a whole year. And that subscription renews annually, of course, because it's for a year. For ProTax T2 corporate tax returns, you again get the unlimited filing of your T2 returns. Specifically to note with both of those as well, the e-filing capabilities. We will be talking about some of those today as well. And then for ProTax T3, so for the trust returns, it's $435 per year for that. And something to note that's kind of a little bonus right now, if you subscribe to ProTax today, you get a $100 dining gift card. So gift cards that come out, and that's a promotion that Intuit and ProTax are running currently. The way that that works is you have to be a new subscriber to ProTax, and you do get a $100 dining gift card if per module up to a total of $200. So if you subscribe for say the T1 and the T2 modules, you will get dining gift cards for $200 total. If you subscribe to all three, you still are restricted to the $200. If you subscribe to just one of them, then you will get the $100 dining gift card as well. Okay, and just kind of a reminder again from last time, and something that I feel is important enough to bring forward to you this time as well. You will notice that I will be reminding you that a couple of times about this. Really important, I say take a screenshot of this. These are the colors and the indicators in ProTax that helps you navigate the different fields in ProTax. So if you see a field that has a purple line on the right-hand side of it, that means that that's a carried forward amount that's been filled into that field. So if you are carrying forward T1 or T2 tax returns, then those fields will show in purple. If it is a red field, that shows that that field has been overridden by you. At the bottom there, I say a little reminder to delete an overridden cell, clear the contents of the cell, and then tab out of that cell. Because we are working in a cloud-based environment and we are restricted to our right click, as you may have experienced with some desktop-based tax or other programs, you can right click and then remove the overridden cell by doing that. In the ProTax cloud-based environment, we don't have that option. So the easiest way to do it is just clear the contents of that cell and then tab out, and it will revert to the info that was in the cell previously. And specifically, if it's a calculated amount, it'll revert to that calculated amount. And then blue on the right-hand side of each field, when you see that, that means it's calculated by the ProTax engine. So for any of you that have used Profile into its desktop-based tax software, which has been out for many, many years, just note that ProTax uses the same tax engine that Profile used. So, you know, millions and millions of tax returns have been prepared using that engine, and that same engine is used to calculate ProTax as well. One last little thing to note is the go to source. So if you see a cell or a text field or a field that has a little arrow next to it, that means that you can click on that arrow and go to where ProTax is pulling that information from. It makes it really easy to jump to that area to see where that calculation has come from. And then once you are in that area, you will note at the top right hand that you can jump back to where you came from as well. So ProTax makes it really easy to jump back and forth to see which cells are calculated and where the cells are coming, the calculations are actually coming from. take a screenshot of this again, and I will have this towards the end of the webinar as well, in case you miss grabbing a screenshot of this now. All right, so let's jump into engagement letters and consent forms. When you are dealing with a client, obviously it is very, very important to have an engagement letter with a client. An engagement letter kind of lays out the understanding of what engagement you will be providing to the client, so that you can have clarity in what work you will be doing what work you will be doing for the client, and they can have that clarity as well. It's also standard practice as well to have engagement letters. And then the consent forms basically relate to CRA's consent, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit as well. But really important to get consent for your client's files from the CRA, especially to make it much easier to access the information from the CRA. And I will be jumping in and showing you live where to access these engagement letters, consent forms as well. There are a couple of places that you can access them. In this screenshot on the right-hand side, it will show you the year-end engagement letter. And it may not appear automatically when you start a new T2. As with anything, you have the search button, which will give you access to any of the forms that are out there. And we'll go through that typing in the search bar to pull up the engagement letter. Where the engagement letter comes from is from the database of letters that ProTax has for your firm, for your company, and which you can use with clients. Really powerful tools in being able to create letters really, really easy and effectively, and make it really easy for you because it pulls the information from the data that you already have there with your clients. So on the left-hand side, you can see the search bar and a screenshot. As soon as you start typing engagement for engagement letter, all of the options that have the engagement letter will be shown to you, and that's where you can add it. And I will show you where to access the library of different letters, not only engagement letters, but all the letters that come with ProTax, or any customized letters that you want to make with ProTax as well. That's in the tax settings area of ProTax. And once we jump into a tax return, I'll show you where to access that as well. Okay, so kind of getting into more of the consent type of forms. This screenshot shows us in a client's ProTax file in their T2. We can see on the top left hand, it's a test company. That's the name of the company. Shows us that it's a T2, shows us the year that we're working on, and a few other items at the top. There we have the search bar. We also have the taxable amount of that client, the taxes owing, or the refund. In this case, we're showing $19,394 owing. If it was a negative, that would be the refund. Once we've filled out all of the efile information and completed the tax return, that efile status will switch to eligible for us as well. And then we've got the documents area. And the documents area is probably one of the the areas that I'm most excited about. Continues to expand in not only the QuickBooks Online Accountant area, the work papers, the books to tax area, but also in the ProTax area. And today we will be talking about that foreign reporting requirements section and how to add documents in that as well. On the right-hand side, we have a couple of different options with drop-down menus. So the first is our returns action. From there, the top is showing us our CRA Autofill My Return, and we'll be talking about that. Then some options for importing the work papers using Giphy, going to work papers. So if you have prepared your client's file in work papers, you can jump back to that work papers area, and you can jump back and forth within the tax module and the work papers themselves. Very powerful, very good area to work on your clients, especially year-end compliance. And just something to note is that you don't necessarily have to have a client in QuickBooks Online to use the functionality that is, part of ProTax as well. So really important to note that. You can import your clients, you can import Giphy, you can start returns from scratch as well and do a bunch of other options. So you don't necessarily have to have your clients on QuickBooks Online. Of course, it's easiest to move from that to the work papers and then to ProTax if you do, but if you don't, you still have a lot of options open to you as well. You can also export your file. So if you've prepared the file in ProTax and there is some reason that you need to export it to Profile, Profile is Intuit's desktop-based tax software. So you still have the ability to export what you've worked on in ProTax to Profile. So really important there. And just a note as well with ProTax and having the unlimited returns, you get those unlimited returns, and everyone in your organization who you give access to work on clients' tax returns will have the ability to work on those as well. So, having the access, as well as another function which I talked about in the intro to ProTax with the communication tools that we have, so you can communicate with others in your firm. Couple other options, as you see on number 2 there, printing your return. So often you want to print your return and send it to your client, have them take a look at it before you e-file it for them. So some good printing options. Also printing certain forms, letters, and other areas as well. So different schedules, things like that. Other actions that we have, duplicating a tax return. So if you want to create different scenarios, other reasons that you might want to duplicate a tax return, you have that option as well. Saving and closing. So that saves the return and puts you back into the ProTax main screen, which will show you all of the client returns that you're working on. Sharing this return. So again, talking about working with tax returns within your firm or your company, being able to share it between yourselves and having access to those returns as well. Renaming the return. So I would say, name the return that name the return something that makes a lot of sense to you. In your firm or company, you might have certain conventions, certain naming conventions. If you need to rename the tax return, you can as well. And then finally, deleting the tax return. So this is the area that you actually go in to delete tax returns. You can't delete tax returns from the main screen of ProTax. You actually have to be in the return itself, and then you can select delete. And that's just, a bit of a safeguard so that returns are not just deleted from the main screen easily. All right, so then the second bubble there is our e-filing bubble. So that's anything that, we're communicating or filing in an electronic sense with the CRA. At the top of that, we see the business consent. So it's really important to obtain clients' business consent before you are accessing their file or e-filing for them. Very easy to obtain business consent in ProTax. If you go to the search or the quick bar, you can type in business consent, and this form will appear for you. Then you click on it. It'll be added to that tax return. And then again, you can go into the return or into that form, fill out what is needed, and we will go through that in a bit to enable you to print, e-file the tax returns as well. So you need that client consent. If you don't have your client's consent, you won't be able to e-file the return, or you won't be able to access any of the information for them, especially within the T2 Autofill My Return. You can also cancel business consent here. So if you need to, if they're moving on or something's happened that you need to cancel the business consent, you can do that from the same area as well. And then again, that T2, that foreign reporting system, the T1135, 1134s, T106, we'll be talking about those as we go on today. Okay, so let's jump into some of the forms and schedules that are available in ProTax for the T2 corporate tax environment. Well, two of the main forms that we use when preparing a tax return and then filing it, of course, and what the CRA likes to look at, the Schedule 100 and Schedule 125. These are two of the standard forms that come with every tax return. Schedule 100 is your balance sheet, and then Schedule 125 is your income statement or your profit and loss statement. If you have used work papers in QuickBooks, then you will have access to these, and these will be ready to go for you. Work papers allows certain things like tax mapping, so that you can map any of the chart of account amounts into your GIFI. So then once that is mapped to your GIFI, that is good to go in ProTax and ready to file with the CRA. You can use the quick bar to open each schedule in ProTax and confirm that the amounts appear there as well. Something that's really great about the quick bar is it allows you access to search for forms that either are or aren't yet in your tax return. So really important to note that if you have a form that's already added as part of the tax return, that client's specific tax return, you can search that in the quick bar in the search field, and it will show you that it's already part of the return, and then you can access it right there. If it's a form that has not yet been added to your corporate tax return, to your client's specific corporate tax return, then you have the ability to add it right there. So many forms that are available as well, and you can access those. If you need the full listing of what's available, then you can access those through the Intuit ProTax help. And I'll briefly touch on that again today, touched on it at last session. So a couple other ones, the Schedule 8 and Schedule 8 class forms. So this is your fixed assets or your capital assets. That's tracking those in the T2 environment. And we use those to calculate capital cost allowance as well. Something that's really important to note as well, if you've worked in the profile environment, the profile has a really good schedule called the Schedule 8 supplementary form, which allows you to reconcile the difference between net book value and your undepreciated capital costs. So your NBV and your UCC. You can easily reconcile those with Schedule 8 supplementary form as well. In the Schedule 8 class form, you can click on details to expand it. And then for each asset, you want to enter the details of that asset class into your Schedule 8. So on the right-hand side, we can see that here we've got class 10 depreciating at 30%. And if you take a look down to the 72,000 highlighted by the green bar there, that was our normal additions for the year, like the normal additions to that class of asset. There again, we can see the blue fields. So those are those calculated fields that ProTax has calculated for you. We are adding in the 72,000 there as an input field, and then it calculates the other fields. So in this in the circumstance, it's showing the federal amount that we've entered, that carries forward to the Alberta and Quebec sides as well. And then on the left-hand side, again, we see that Form Explorer or the search bar where we can quickly access any of these forms. Here we have the Schedule 8, and there is that Schedule 8 sup. So that's a supplementary form where you can reconcile your net book value and the undepreciated capital cost as well. And just kind of delving a little bit further into that, on the left-hand side, we can see our different row numbers and our capital cost allowance amounts. So very easy to see it in a table type format. On the right-hand side, that is our Schedule 1. So that is kind of a reconciliation from our net income or taxable income. And that's where we are adding back the amortization. So if we have used work papers, or if we have on the client's financial statements for accounting purposes, we have amortized the tangible assets, so those fixed assets, that's where we would add that back. When we enter the Schedule 125 or import the GIFI for that, it will automatically calculate that amount for you on Schedule 1 of ProTax. And then it will also, once you've looked at the CCA side of things, that capital cost allowance from your Schedule 8 will also automatically be deducted. So it gives you a good picture of Schedule 1 and how you can add back based on your GIFI and your CCA, your Schedule 8 amounts that you've entered. Some other forms to quickly take a look at. You have your Schedule 50. So that's shareholder information, whether, excuse me, your client is owned personally or by corporations. That's where you can enter the Schedule 50 information. We'll be talking about the auditor as well, and how it will point you to information that is missing on your T2, your corporate tax return as well. Things like having shareholder information as well. So we can jump in and add one of those schedules. I'll show you briefly how to do that today as well. Schedule 141, the notes checklist. So again, just showing you that the schedules that are required when filling out a tax return, and they are part of ProTax. Also, Schedule 3, if you are dealing with dividends. So if the corporation paid or received dividends, then the Schedule 3, ProTax's Schedule 3, will let you detail how those distributions happened. So if they were dividends that were, say, paid to other than connected corporations, for example, if they're eligible dividends, that's Schedule 3 that can assist you there. At the bottom right-hand side, you will see the ProTax help bubble. And this bubble guides you throughout your use of ProTax to get help on additional resources. I talked about in the introduction to ProTax, the different ways that you can access help. I'll be talking about that again in the T1 module. So many different ways that you can access help through the ProTax environment. Okay, and the all-important auditor. This is one of my favorite features of ProTax. For those that have used Profile in the past, you will be familiar with the auditor. That same auditor is pulled forward into the cloud-based environment and into ProTax, and it gives you a plethora of information when you are filling out your client's corporate tax return. So as we can see, top left, we have forms, and then at the right, we have auditor. So the forms section, that's where you are filling out the forms for your clients for ProTax for their tax return. Then the auditor is on the right-hand side. That's where you select the auditor, and it shows you the various different items that need attention that you should pay attention to when doing your corporate tax return. So as part of that, we have our issues. As we can see on this screenshot, we've got our warnings. So for example, please answer yes or no if the T183 is signed using an e-signature. So certain items that you have to have filled out properly in order to e-file a client's tax return. And as we talked about before, how it will show the not eligible versus the eligible status for e-filing. Many of those items can be covered off and cleared out through the warnings section. If you have certain issues that have been signed off, that a preparer or somebody reviewing the return is saying, oh yeah, that's okay, let's deal with it, that's fine. Those will go off into your sign-offs. And then a great section is that override section. So any of those fields that you have overridden, and remember, overridden cells will appear with a red bar at the right-hand side of that cell. Any of those fields will appear in the overridden section. So it's a really comprehensive way to see a summary of those. On this tax return, as we can see, it's got the purple, which means it's a carry forward amount. And then we have some of those blue fields, which mean that those are calculated using the ProTax engine. All right. And then the wrap it up section, that's where you're wrapping up your client's tax return. So a few things that you want to do, when you're filing, you want to make sure that you've got everything complete and ready to wrap up. That's where you want to print the tax return and send it to your client. Very easy to do that. Have your client sign the T2, and don't forget about the all-important T183 form as well, to give yourself authorization to file your client's tax return, e-file your client's tax return. So again, kind of like a review of this area, the T2 area, the e-file, that's where you can directly file your T2 for your clients from this area. All right. Okay, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break, and then we're going to head on to doing more with ProTax. So feel free to get up, stretch, go to the washroom, and then we'll be back in 10 minutes. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you had a good chance to stretch and take a little bit of a break. Okay, so we're going to start and jump into the T2 part of ProTax live here. And to access ProTax, on the left-hand side of your QBOA, you select ProTax. If you click on that cell itself, it will take you to the ProTax environment. Otherwise, you can go directly to the T2, T1, or T3. Once you are in the T2, it will show you your client listing of open tax files. And from there, that's where you can access any of the returns that you've been working on, or you can create new returns. At the top right, you'll see tax settings. We talked briefly about letters today, about engagement letters. And this is where you can find the library of letters this is the easiest way to find it. So it's just in the tax setting area. That also has your e-file, your prepare info, T3 transmission. This is where you can print different sets of your tax returns. And this is where you access the letters. So for example, we have the year-end engagement letter. Something that you'll notice, if it's created by Intuit and you don't have the ability to customize that specific one, you can still click on the drop-down menu and customize from there. It will then create a copy of that standard template for you, which you can then name and change as you see fit. You can customize how you'd like to. So for example, that's what I've done with this year-end engagement letter. That's our own version, and it shows your firm as who has created that one. So that is just a copy of the engagement letter. And that's part of the letters area that I talked about. Okay, and then just jumping very quickly into the tax return. Whatever tax return you're working on, you can just click on there to jump directly in. Again, at the top, it'll show you the name, that it's a T2, the year that you're working on. The quick bar, that's the search ability to search any form. Some questions as well can be answered through that. So it's a very powerful search ability or search capability built into ProTax. Note that you can also press Control-Alt-S to open that quick bar or that search bar. That does work on PCs. Not sure if it works on MacBooks. It may be the variation of the Control and the Alt keys to access that. So getting into the engagement letter, kind of as a review, on the left-hand side, this will show us the forms that we have in this specific client's tax return. Now, notice that the engagement letter is not part of that form. So if we want to search for it or add it, we just click in the quick bar or again, Control-Alt-S, it'll pop it up. And then if we type engagement, started typing engagement, that's where we will see the forms that we can add. If this form had already been added to our T2, to this client-specific T2, then we will see that appear as a form that's already there. Otherwise, we see that it's adding forms. So, for example, if we had the S100, it would show go to. So that's where we can directly go to our S100. It's already part of that client's T2. The engagement form shows that it hasn't been added. And that's where we can add that. So I will be adding this one in a second, but it also gives you additional information on engagement. So anything that you type into this search bar, this quick search, it will also give you little tips and tricks as well. And you can go to those directly. So I will be adding this engagement letter here. Click on that, and it will open up in ProTax and add it to the bottom of your client's tax return. So to jump into it, you click on it, and that will jump you into that. Now, notice as part of the letters area, it's already pulled specific information for this client. So Tracy Smith is the CEO of this client. The client is called Test TNT, and it's already pulled that information for you. That's where you can access, and where you access those fields are again through the ProTax main screen in tax settings and in letters. So if we were to jump into that quickly, we will see all of those fields that you can access and pull forward from the database of information that's already there as part of your client's tax return. So very easy to jump in back and forth. Again, your forms is on the left, the auditor is on the right, and then in the auditor, we have those 4 areas that we talked about. I will actually show this to you before I show you the slide, but it gives an indication of something that is a new addition to ProTax, the live auditor. So in the past, we've had our regular auditor, which is a very powerful tool and helps us fill out our T2 or our T1 tax returns, tells us, things that are missing. Please indicate your language of choice, things like that. You click on that, it will take you directly to the area that you need to make sure that you complete for that client's tax return. Very easy to access through that. The new addition with the live auditor makes it even easier. So it's kind of an as-you-go type warning or system that lets you know things that need to be completed, things that need to happen while you are completing your tax return. So if you are in any area of your client's tax return and we want to access it through the live auditor, we will notice it will automatically pop up an information box saying that something is wrong and that has to happen. So for example, was the corporation an associated CCPC in the previous year? Please say if it was yes, please answer yes or no. So that's our live auditor appearing right there. If we turn it off, it doesn't appear in that area specifically on our tax return, but it will still appear in the auditor area. So a couple options that you have there. If you don't like seeing it as part of the tax return as you go, you can easily toggle it off. But if you'd like to have that, it's really accessible, and then you just fill it out as you go. As soon as you answer the question that it's looking for, or the thing that it's found that needs to be addressed, it will go away. The other area is the quick mode, and we'll be jumping and talking about the quick mode as I head back into our PowerPoint presentation. Okay. So back into our slides, it gives a screenshot of the live auditor, which I just described. And that's where you can make the updates in real time. Again, the red border, I didn't really describe the red border, but you will also see a red border around any erroneous or empty fields that need action taken to them. Something to also note, with Live Auditor, you can now delete and override with one click in the overridden field, and that will restore it to its default value. So as I talked about previously in that other slide that I had, you can also delete an overridden cell by removing the contents of that cell. So highlighting everything, hitting your delete button, and then tabbing or clicking out of that cell. And then that will remove the override on that cell. Okay, and then the quick mode. So this is another new feature of ProTax. The quick mode allows you to optimize your tax return. It speeds up your work. When you enable it, what it does is it reduces the bandwidth usage and ensures quicker processing of the tax return. So if your internet connection might not be as fast, you can enable the quick mode and it reduces the bandwidth required for your tax return. So another new feature that's very handy to have. Okay, and then return actions. I described this previously. We're going to jump next into the T2 Autofill My Return, but just note again the other options that are available to you within a tax return environment. And remember, you have to be in the tax return to have these options available to you. They are specific to the tax return that you're working on. Okay. So T2's Autofill My Return, Autofill Your Return. The CRA has allowed both autofill returns in the T2 and the T1 environment. So we'll be talking about the T1 in January. They also have it available to your T2. So it's the secure service that business owners or authorized representatives. So if you're an authorized representative for your client, you can download the information directly from the CRA when you are preparing their tax returns, your client's tax returns. Just note that it's not mandatory for T2 certified products. So some products include the services and others do not. It's not a mandatory thing. You do not necessarily have to use the autofill on your client's files, but in many cases, it will speed up entry into your client's files. Again, the efile tab, this is part of the, having clients authorization. Being an authorized e-filer as well is in the tax settings area of ProTax. And one thing that I note, I always include this screen because it is so important. If you have registered for e-filing in the past, ensure that you update it because you need to have it you have to have it renewed every year for e-filing. So that is different than your authorized rep. Once you're an authorized rep, that stays on for a number of years, and we'll talk about that. But e-filing renews every year, and it can take up to 30 days to meet the suitability screening requirements or credentials that the CRA uses for you. I did mine on November 1st of this year, and it just came through on November 30th. So it did actually take 30 days this year. So I don't know if the CRA is running a bit further behind. Previously, it's usually been in a couple of weeks, maybe a few weeks, but this year it was almost exactly a month. So if you have registered for e-file and you need to renew, please do that ASAP. Something to also note this year for e-filing, you have to have your rep ID. So you have to put your rep ID or your group ID into that to be able to e-file. You can easily enter your preparer info, whether it be your rep ID, your group ID, or the business number, and that's your business number or your firm's business number. You can easily enter that again through the tax settings area of ProTax. So that main screen where I went to for the letters, there is the new preparer info tab there. And I see that I think somebody had asked a question on that. So that's where you enter your rep ID. A couple things to note. Again, security is always increasing. The CRA is always changing things and requiring more. An October 17th mandate from the CRA now requires adding missing information. So if you previously had a rep ID that had, maybe your social insurance number missing, date of birth, things like that, you have to, the CRA is looking at that and you have to get a new code sent by snail mail. So really important to note if you're using your rep ID, if you are accessing your client's information, to make sure that you have your rep ID up to date as well. And just a screenshot kind of showing the new process for confirming a representative. With my company, we always recommend our clients to have the My account, the CRA's My account, and for their business, if they've got a business, the CRA's My Business account. It makes things much easier for them to access their information and as well to grant you access if needed as well. So, that gives you another option aside from the business consent form too. Something else to note, once registered, the CRA recommends you enable email notifications so that you get notification when an authorization request has been enacted upon. And again, note that Profile is one of the e-file or certified tax software programs that does allow for that representation to happen. Okay, so speaking specifically on the T2 autofill, the AFR Autofill Your Return, some of the T2 balances that come in include this list. And note that it's a little bit different when operating in a T1 environment compared to the T2 environment when you're using AFR. So some of the T2 return balances, refundable dividend tax on hand or your RDTOH, dividend refund, other than eligible dividend refund. You have your GRIP balances, your general rate income pool balances, things like non-capital losses, those balances, your capital losses, your capital dividend, your CDA account. So a lot of different information that can be brought in through the AFR. Other balances like your corporate account balances, so prior year repayments, credits, other things, business number, address, email, and the return mail indicator as well. Now, what does it look like when you're in T2 AFR? So as we saw with the return actions button, the very top item is your CRA Autofill My Return. That brings up a screen that looks like the screenshot on the left to import your client's information. So it will show you the client name that you are looking to import and their business number. Once you click through to the next screen, that's when you will have to log in with your rep ID. So that will give you the access to the CRA. On the right-hand side, you see once you've logged in and you're requesting that AFR information, it's going to show you the business number that it's requested the information for. And then, of course, you have to click next from there. Once you do that, it will connect with the CRA's portal. Once you see the successfully connected area, that's when you can close that window. You will also then be brought up with a window that asks you which client data you want to download. Something really interesting and important to note here that differs from the T1, if some of you have used AFR for your T1s, in a T1 environment, you will see the tax the tax return information for that individual or both if they have a spouse. In the T2 environment, it allows you to pull in information for prior year's return data as well. So really, really handy feature to have. In this situation, it's showing, some 2018, 2016, 2019, various years for prior year return data. You can also pull in the corporation's details, their account balance, and their return balances as well. And then once you jump in through there, this gives you even more information as to where you can access or what you want to actually pull in. So as we can see on this screenshot, we're going to pull in our accounts. Something that's interesting to note, show only the discrepancies. So if you have information in that tax return already, and there's a discrepancy between what it's showing and what the CRA is showing, then you can show only those discrepancies, and it will hide all of the information that adds up or is the same between the two sources. If you want to import all of the data into the T2, you click the Accounts on Return button, the little check mark there, that will import it all. And you can also view the discrepancies between the CRA and the T2 by expanding all. So if you can see on the right-hand side by bubble number 3 there, you can expand all of the different items. And, great place to see what's come in from the CRA, what is on your return, the return that you're preparing, and what the difference is. In cases like things like the address, as we can see the address on the data from the CRA and the data on the return, there we have avenue in one of them and then av in the other. So that's the discrepancy. The difference isn't an amount. So it just shows that, yes, there is a difference there. So really easy to kind of get, an overview view, an overall view of any of the differences there as well. Okay, so next we're going to look at doing our GIFI import, and that's the General Index of Financial Information. You may get that from other sources, as long as you have a source that exports the GIFI. That's the information that the CRA needs to be able to complete the Schedule 100 and the Schedule 125, as well as other various important items. The GIFI import should have been sent to you. If you cannot access it, let me just see what they've told me. You should be able to access it in the Q&A section, and it will show as a zip file. So just note that you have to download that zip file for today's materials to be able to access it. So download it onto your computer, and the GIFI file will appear in that zipped file. So you can't actually import the zip file directly. You actually need the GIFI file or the text file. So there are two versions. You can import both a GFI file or a TXT file. So it's just the difference of GIFI file. Some software exports it as a GFI. You can also use any standard TXT file that has the proper GIFI information in it. If you are working with work papers and you've already mapped your tax files, then you will not need to import any GIFI files. This is only if you are creating a new tax return directly from GIFI. So in order to start that, in the main screen of ProTax, you will click on Create New Return, as you can see on the screenshot on your left. Once you click Create New Return, then you will be shown the screen that you can see as a screenshot on your right, which has the client name. So you can link that up with a current client that you have in your QBOA and your QuickBooks Online Accountant, your client database. So if you already have that client set up in your QuickBooks Online Accountant, does not necessarily mean that you have to have used QuickBooks Online with that client. Because QBOA is a client database as well, you can just have all of your clients' information in there, such as their name, address, things like that. And you can then link the tax return in ProTax to that. Otherwise, you can select the dropdown and add it as a new client. You will then want to add the year that you are working. So in this case, it's January 2020 to December 31st of 2020. So it's that full calendar year, which is the client's fiscal year. Then you can also name that tax return. Remember, I talked about naming it, making it something that is very understandable or intuitive so that you know when you're going to access that tax return again. If your company or your firm has conventional naming restrictions, then you would want to follow those that you have in your firm. Then from the data sources, you will notice that we've got 3 different data sources here. We have the QuickBooks client work papers. So that's if you are already working in the QuickBooks client in the work papers environment. That will be where you already have the Giphy mapping in place, so you don't need to remap. You can also start a brand new blank tax return from this area. So clicking on the create new return, entering the information and clicking start blank return. So again, you do not need your client to be working in QuickBooks Online. You can create any blank return from ProTax. Third option is what we're going to be doing today, and that's uploading a file. So again, that's either the GFI file or the TXT file that you will be uploading. Once you click that, then it's as simple as either dropping the file there. So you can go into your Forms Explorer or on your computer, drag and drop the file into there, or you can click the upload a file to open up the Forms Explorer and access the information through there. Okay, actually, just before we take a break, I am going to show you the area where you can access it directly. Just have to jump to my screen here to share it. Okay, so remember, you have to be in the ProTax area in your T2, and this is where you can create the new return. And this is where you start from with the client QuickBooks work papers, or what we're going to be doing today, uploading the file or starting the blank tax return. So very easy to access it from that area. Just remember, it's in the main area of your ProTax environment. Okay, and we are going to take a quick 10-minute break again to stretch, and then we will come back and we will be working on the T2 foreign reporting and doing our own example. All right, welcome back, everyone. Our final little piece of this webinar today. We're going to start just showing you the upcoming webinars that we have. So we had our original T2 introduction on November 17th. Today's date for the T2 experienced T2 users. And then our T1 webinars are going to be on January 11th and February 2nd. So if you want to attend any of those, please just register for those through the link. And the link, the Intuit team has sent the link in the Q and answer area of today's webinar. So you will have the link to attend those sessions. A couple other things that I want to bring your attention to. ProTax release notes, constant updates to ProTax. So even after I taught the November 17th session, there have been a lot of releases happening and updates. You can access that in the ProTax help area. So November 22nd, things like T2 notice of assessment download is now available in ProTax. You can get the notice of assessments downloaded directly through your ProTax portal. Bunch of different schedule updates and changes as well. Another really good area for accessing information, if you are in the QuickBooks blog and the taxes area, really handy place to answer questions. What are miscellaneous expenses? You know, PST, things like that. A lot of different resources that Intuit has provided for you as ProTax and QBOA users. And then finally, before we jump back in, wanted to just show we had a few questions asking about WAC or the web access code versus e-filing. So yes, absolutely, you have the ability to enter a web access code. If you are in a tax return, the client's tax return, you click on the e-file, T2 federal, so under the review and e-file the return. There you will see the e-file account, which you can enter. If you have a web access code, you can click on the web access code button and enter your web access code there directly. So allows you to e-file corporate tax return using the WAC or the web access code as well. Okay, so let's jump back in. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the Foreign Reporting Requirements Management System, or the FRRMS. It's quite a mouthful. And this is a really important change that the CRA has made, and it is mandatory for many clients, any foreign entities, and the penalties are quite steep. So in the past, the IRS, the US tax agency, has really expanded their reach in wanting to know any foreign entities. The CRA is also doing that as well. So important to note for your clients that you want to handle these proactively so you don't face steep penalties. In the US, I believe the penalty is $25,000 US. In Canada, the penalties aren't as steep, but you do want to pay attention to those because there are penalties. And what it has, it requires, there's 3 different forms that are involved: the T106, the T1134, and the T1135. As part of the FRRMS, ProTax now lets you submit these documents directly to the CRA through the ProTax environment. And that's just through the e-file submit e-documents feature. Okay, so a couple screenshots for you there. On the left-hand side, this is showing where you access that, again, through the e-file button, and then at the bottom with the submit e-documents. So very easy to access, obviously. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the return type. You select the return type that you need, And this is where you can add or delete the e-documents that are required. So really easy way to do it through this portal and through the returns that you're needing to submit. And as a whole, the Intuit is making it much easier to coordinate or to file with the CRA, as well as to have the documents at hand. As we kind of seen through the work papers environment and the books to tax, you can attach a bunch of different documents that relate to your clients, things that, make it much easier for you and your clients to correspond back and forth on the documents, and for you to be able to gather this information for your client file and for the CRA. So ProTax separates the documents into 3 different areas. We have the documents that are already uploaded to QBO, so that's the documents in QuickBooks. We have the documents for CRA submission, and then we have the documents that are already transmitted to the CRA. So if we click the CRA docs for CRA, the submission, we select the form type, and then we add the documents to submit. And then we click on Start CRA Submission. With a doc send, you can both send and receive. You can look at what you upload, view, and request from your QBO client. So a really good way to interface or interact with your client through QBO for any kind of documents requested. And in ProTax, you go to the Documents window, click in QBO to view and to upload your files. If you are wanting to obtain a file from your client, from your QBO client, then you just click Create Client Request on the bottom right-hand side of the screenshot that you see on the left. So very easy to initiate. Then when you create a request, it'll show the client you're requesting it from, what you are requesting. So here it has articles of incorporation. This is always a handy thing to have, your client's articles of incorporation. Nice to have them on hand and in a cloud environment. We just find that we need to access those documents from time to time. So to have it on hand in the cloud environment makes it really, really easy to access. And then you notify your client with the toggle, and then you click Share. I said I would be bringing this screenshot up again, or this screen up again, this slide, the different items in ProTax to remind you. Purple, again, is a carried forward value. Red is an overridden value in ProTax. And blue means that it's been calculated by the ProTax engine. And again, the go to source ability. Okay, so now it's your turn. We get to import a Giphy file. So if you want to right now, you can jump into ProTax yourself, and we're going to be importing the Giphy file, the one that you've have that was given to you either previously, or you can download. You can see it in the webinar chat to download it. Remember, again, it's a zip file. So that zip file should contain 2 different files, both a TXT and a GFI file, or the Giphy file. Once you're in ProTax, click Create New Return. This is that familiar screen that we've seen already, where we can go to the bottom or select any client that we already have, or we can add a new client. We want to enter the year start and the year-end date. Test client for Giphy import. And then really important, make sure you click that upload a file. So this is where we're going to upload the Giphy file or the TXT file. We can click upload the file, or we can also drag the file there. So just to give you an idea of a GFI file that's coming in, very fast in how it uploads it. And it'll give you an import summary of the data that it's brought in. So based on the Giphy code. So deposits in Canadian banks, accounts receivable, and the balances for those. So here, as you can see, the assets, liabilities, and equity along with the retained earnings that have been brought in. So that is your balance sheet, that is your Schedule 100. And then we have the items from our Schedule 125, the revenue and expense items. So really easy to upload that into ProTax. Okay, jumping back to our slides. Of course, ProTax resources that we want to access. You know, the help is available to you in many different facets. If you are in that client's tax return, again, the blue bubble on the bottom right will allow you to contact into it through various methods, through phone, through chat. You can also explore the ProTax FAQs or frequently asked questions. Things here, you know, I'd seen questions asked in today's webinar. Can I file a return for my own firm? So here, yes, you can create a return from scratch, and this is how you do it. What forms are available in ProTax? What years do they cover? So, you know, all of those different resources that you can access directly through the ProTax environment. ProTax FAQs, you know, more than just taxes as well. A lot of different resources and different databases that you can access through that. This is where you can also learn more about any of the webinars, such as the webinars I talked about that are coming up in January and February, any QuickBooks Connect events or other events that are happening, connecting with accountants as well. So access to these resources directly through the ProTax screen as well, that environment. And that's it. I'm just looking through some extra questions that were asked today, looking at to see if I had forgotten anything or anything that needs to be brought up. Again, those next two sessions are January 11th and February 2nd. The ProTax manual, the T2 starts at page 106. Prior to that, page 100 to 105 is based on the T1 program. A couple questions about Quebec tax support that is coming, but no specific date mentioned in there. And I think that is it for the questions today. Cami asked one last thing, Schedule 100, Schedule 125. That's what your Giphy imports. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining today's session. Happy to have you and all the best this holiday season, and hope to see you in the new year on ProTax T1 Introduction and Advanced in January and February. All right, take care. Thank you.